Alright, how you getting on? Now some of you might be struggling with the changes there. Please don't let that worry you. Just focus on the 60-second rule. If you can only make one change in 60 seconds, that's a start. Hopefully everyone out there can do a chord change of those three that we talked about within 60 seconds to get an accurate, clean sound. If you're not able to do that, go back to the other videos on each of the individual chords, because you're not ready to start changing yet until you've got clear sounding chords. If you can do one change in 60 seconds, you've got a foundation to start working from there, because each time you do this, you'll be able to do slightly more chord changes on those three that we talked about with each time that you can practice it. Okay, there's a couple of other things I want to share with you that will help with these chord changes. The first one is what I call the Jedi Master technique, because it involves just closing your eyes or facing away from the fretboard when you're playing the chords, because what can happen is you're relying too much on your eyesight and the visuals of the changes that it can throw you off slightly. You've got to be a bit of a ninja here and sort of close your eyes and try and do the changes that we talked about without looking at the fretboard. Now if we take the first chord change, which was from E to A, look away from the fretboard. You can look at the fretboard when you line up the first chord, that's okay. Line up the E major chord, look away from the fretboard, or close your eyes if you're tempted to look, and play the E major and the change from E major to A major. You'll find that it will feel very odd because you would have been using your eyesight a lot, making sure that your fingers are behind the frets, making sure that your fingers are in the right space between the frets, not too far over the string. All of that is good visually, but for the changes you really need to get a feel of how the chords change from one to the other. So the 60 seconds on the clock challenge, Jedi Master, not looking at the fretboard, play each of the chord changes that we've talked about, E to A, without looking at the fretboard, then from A to D, and then from D to E, which would be the most difficult one probably for most people, without looking at the fretboard. If you've done your anchor point, it gives you a good foundation so that you don't even need to look at it, because your first finger should be in the same place, it's just moving up and down slightly. The rest of the fingers might fall accurately or not. If they don't, see if you can do it without looking. If you can't, then look at the fretboard. So that's the Jedi Master technique. The only final thing I just want to talk about with these changes to help is to work on the feel that I was talking about. Because what will happen, every chord change from one chord to the next will have a slightly different feel about it compared to the next. So if a chord change that we haven't done, for example, is from A to E, because we've done E to A, that will have a different feel because your fingers are having to do something different. It's going to have to remember a different movement than it knew before. So when you're playing these changes, remember that from D to A is different than from A to D. A lot of people think it's the same, but your fingers are having to do a different movement each time. So you almost got to learn them separately. So mix and match your chord changes as much as possible. But for now, only do E to A to D, and D to E. These are the three changes that I want you guys to work on, and I want you guys to practice on. Get your 60 seconds on the clock, do as many changes in isolation as possible, then do 60 seconds on the clock and see if you can do a Jedi Master version of the same thing. Okay, that concludes our three chords. You're now ready to start strumming and start making what will sound a little bit something like music, which is why we picked up the guitar in the first place, hopefully. That's what we're going to be looking at in the next part. We're going to be looking at strumming and getting a feel, a groove, a rhythm, before we move on to playing some songs, which I hope you'll enjoy. Alright, I'll see you in the next